addiction or problem, talk to someone. Talk to someone you respect, whether it's a counselor or to go to a 12-step program.
The 1970s in the United Kingdom witnessed the flourishing of some of the most extraordinary talents. But behind the arrogant smiles and enormous fortunes, they were nothing more than shattered, solitary souls, borrowing intoxication to escape reality. There was a stage icon who drained 4 bottles of vodka a day just to deny his own greatness. A legendary rock drummer who collapsed because of the very medication meant to cure his addiction. Or a prodigy of acting who once raised a glass of champagne to celebrate an Oscar, only to have that very substance claim his life. So, who were these names, and what drove them to the very depths of self-destruction? Part 1. Richard Burton, a voice echoing from the coal mines of Wales. In the dusty archives of the BBC, recordings of Richard Burton's voice still remain. It is a deep, resonant voice, carrying the authority of classic Shakespearean plays, yet tinged with a bone-deep sorrow. And yet, behind that commanding voice was a fractured soul. Richard Burton's life was like a tape played in reverse, running back from the dazzling red carpets of Hollywood to the dark coal mines of Wales where he was born. Throughout that journey, only one thing never left him: alcohol. On a quiet night in 1975, in a room faintly scented with cigarette smoke, Burton carefully wrote in his personal diary in slanted lines, "I have been more or less drunk for the past 2 days. I don't know why, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it." This was not the confession of a remorseful man, but the sigh of someone who had already surrendered. At that time, The Sun shocked the public by reporting that this legendary actor could consume 3 to 4 bottles of vodka a day. His blood alcohol level was constantly at a critical point, to the extent that Elizabeth Taylor, the woman bound to him in a passionate yet toxic love, once broke down in tears, holding him and pleading, "Richard, I don't want to watch you die because of this bottle." And yet, even the love of one of the greatest screen beauties could not save him. Burton once bitterly confessed to a close friend that alcohol was the only friend that could lull him to sleep. Deep inside, he carried an unrelenting guilt, a sense of betrayal for abandoning the crown of a Shakespearean stage legend to chase the fleeting lights of Hollywood. Alcohol blurred the line between a true artist and a commercial actor. The peak of this destruction came in 1974 on the set of The Klansman. Burton nearly lost his life after becoming so intoxicated he could no longer stand on his own. The director had to arrange for him to sit or lean against walls in almost every scene. Realizing he was on the edge, he attempted to use antabuse, a drug that induces severe vomiting if alcohol is consumed. But he failed miserably. Burton wryly admitted, "The call of the bottle is stronger than any medicine in the world." He kept drinking, as if trying to burn away his entire past and his own talent. That self-destruction dragged on relentlessly, eroding his once godlike beauty, until the day he finally collapsed. And if Richard Burton chose to destroy himself in the quiet melancholy of diary pages, then elsewhere in England, another star chose to burn his life away in deafening screams. Part 2. Keith Moon, a party that lasted until the next morning. The pounding drums, the ear-splitting beats, and a crowd gone wild. The life of Keith Moon, the legendary drummer of The Who, was like a mad, noisy rock and roll party that seemed to have no end. That fateful party began on a feverish September night when Paul McCartney hosted a film screening to celebrate Buddy Holly's birthday. Beneath glittering lights, Keith Moon appeared radiant, laughing, toasting glasses with the biggest names in music. No one knew it would be the final stage of his life. For a long time, people had grown used to Moon the Loon, the Madman Moon. He was the kind of man who could casually drive a Rolls-Royce straight into a hotel swimming pool, or blow up a toilet with explosives, or treat throwing televisions out of high windows as a refined hobby. Audiences laughed. The press praised his rebellion as a symbol of rock spirit. But behind the spotlight of this chaotic jester was a terrifying emptiness. Alcohol and drugs were not merely indulgences. They were the only medicine strong enough to mask the tangled chaos in his mind. Moon feared silence. He feared that when the party ended, when the applause faded, he would have to face the fragile, insecure version of himself. The worst always comes when people least expect it. On the night of September 7, 1978, after leaving McCartney's party, Moon returned to his apartment with his girlfriend, Annette Walter Lax. Instead of continuing to drink, he picked up a bottle of Heminevrin, a powerful sedative prescribed to help him fight his alcohol cravings. Seeing the concern in Annette's eyes, he smiled reassuringly. "I'll just take a little to sleep well." The next morning, he woke up, irritably argued with his girlfriend over breakfast, then swallowed another handful of pills before drifting into his final sleep. When the autopsy results were released, the world shuddered. 32 pills were found in his stomach, 26 of them still intact, not yet dissolved. A coroner sorrowfully remarked, "He took the detox medication as if he wanted alcohol to vanish from his life instantly." When the album Who Are You was released after his death, guitarist Pete Townsend broke down in tears. In the silence of the studio, he choked out, "Keith died from the very thing he used to escape his fear." A cruel twist of fate no screenwriter would dare invent. Apartment number 9 on Curzon Street, where Keith Moon took his last breath, was the very same place where singer Mama Cass of the Mamas and the Papas had died 4 years earlier. That room had swallowed 2 great souls of the music world. The noise of Keith Moon finally faded behind closed doors, leaving behind a chilling emptiness. The very silence that another comedy legend would endure until the final moments of his life. Part 3. Tony Hancock, the note left behind in a Sydney apartment. There is a cruel truth in the entertainment world. Those who bring the most laughter often carry the deepest pain within. The life of Tony Hancock, one of Britain's greatest comedy stars of the 1950s and 60s, can be summed up in a crumpled scrap of paper. It was found by police in a silent apartment in Sydney, lying beside an empty bottle of vodka and a drained vial of barbiturate sedatives. His final message was written in shaky, uneven handwriting. "Things just seem to go wrong too many times." Tony Hancock once had everything in his hands. He stood at the peak of fame, making millions of British families fix their eyes on the television every week, waiting for a smile. But when the studio lights went out, darkness began to swallow him whole. A former co-star once recalled with quiet sorrow a late night in a smoke-filled bar when Hancock raised his glass, his bloodshot eyes staring into the void. "I make this whole country laugh, but every night when I go home, only this bottle is willing to sit and listen to me complain." That loneliness did not appear out of nowhere. Hancock suffered from severe paranoia and deep insecurity. He constantly believed that everyone around him, from friends and writers to his most loyal co-stars, were secretly exploiting him or trying to steal his spotlight. That invisible madness drove him to fire all those closest to him. He severed every human connection with his own hands. And when real friends disappeared, vodka became the last friend that would never betray him, a companion that soothed him while silently draining his life away day by day. In 1968, an exclusive report by the Daily Mirror left fans heartbroken. Hancock had moved to Australia to restart his career, only to lock himself inside a shabby rented apartment, drinking endlessly until he lost all sense of day or night. No one could pull him out of that abyss. His sudden and solitary death in Sydney struck the British public like a hammer blow. An entire nation was forced to realize that the man who had once brought life to some of the greatest sitcoms had chosen to end his own life in complete silence, without laughter, without applause. From his collapse in that suffocating room in Australia, the intoxicating force of alcohol continued to extend its tentacles into another setting, far more violent and furious: the open sea. Part 4. Robert Shaw, A Drunken Tale on the Orca. The set of the blockbuster Jaws in 1974 has often been described as a small-scale horror film behind the scenes. Mechanical failures plagued the boat, the budget ran dry, the weather was brutal, and in the midst of that chaos stood Robert Shaw. Taking on the role of shark hunter Quint, Shaw delivered a legendary performance, especially in the iconic scene where he recounts the sinking of the USS Indianapolis. His cold face, hollow stare into the void, and haunting, rumbling voice etched themselves into cinematic history. Yet few people know that the price of that extraordinary scene was utter intoxication. Director Steven Spielberg later shuddered as he recalled the night before filming. Robert Shaw had clutched a bottle of whiskey all night, drinking heavily while rewriting the entire monologue himself. He stepped onto the set unsteady, reeking of alcohol, attempting to perform fueled by drunken intensity. That day, he couldn't finish it, Spielberg recounted. We had to cancel and shoot it again the next day because he was too drunk. On the cramped, rocking deck of the Orca, during long and exhausting waiting periods, Shaw would often press a whiskey bottle into the hands of his co-star, Richard Dreyfuss, smiling provocatively. "Drink. It'll help you forget the fear." But in truth, the one running from fear was himself. Robert Shaw was a strong man, a brilliant literary talent, and the pillar of a large family with 10 children. The pressure to provide, combined with his disillusionment with the artificial glamour of Hollywood, pushed him into the arms of alcohol. It gave him the raging fire needed to act, but silently gnawed at and destroyed his heart. Close friends knew he was slowly killing himself, yet no one could stop a man already exhausted with life. The end came without warning. In 1978, while driving with his wife along a quiet road in Ireland, Shaw suddenly suffered a massive heart attack. He pulled over, stepped out as if to catch some fresh air, then collapsed forever by the roadside at the age of 51. In his death records, doctors clearly noted heart failure, with the underlying cause being years of severe alcohol abuse. Part 5. Jack Wilde, The Artful Dodger and the Oscar Champagne. The 1968 Academy Awards was a dazzling night of lights and thunderous applause. Among the world's most powerful screen stars, a 16-year-old boy walked in with a radiant smile, clutching a prestigious nomination for his role as the Artful Dodger in the musical Oliver. People gathered around him, pouring expensive glasses of sparkling champagne to celebrate his brilliant future. That night, no one realized those costly glasses of champagne marked the beginning of a tragedy that would drown the rest of the young star's life. Fame that arrives too early always carries an invisible price. And just 3 years after that glorious Oscar night, at the age of 21, when many young people are still finding their way, Jack Wilde had already become completely dependent on alcohol. The amount of alcohol he consumed daily would make even grown men shudder. Half a bottle of strong vodka, along with at least 2 bottles of wine. The pressure of maintaining his image as a golden boy, combined with endless showbiz parties, turned Jack into a true addict. In an interview during his later years, he quietly admitted, "I believe I would have become an alcoholic whether I was famous or not. But that dazzling spotlight sped everything toward the edge." Alcohol's destruction of Jack's fragile body was merciless. He suffered cardiac arrest 3 times due to alcohol shock, near-death experiences that brought him to the very gates of death. His girlfriend, Claire, once tearfully shared the horror of those long nights watching him struggle. There were mornings when Jack drank so much that he woke up with a blank stare. He couldn't even remember his own name. Alcohol did not just steal his memory, it cruelly took away the most precious thing for an actor, his voice. Oral cancer, the result of years drowned in alcohol and cigarettes, forced doctors to remove part of his tongue and vocal cords. Even unable to speak clearly, forced to communicate with difficulty, Jack Wilde still tried to hold on to a final fragment of optimism. He once managed a crooked smile and gestured, "At least I've had a lot of fun, even if the bottle has taken so much from me." In 2006, Jack took his final breath, closing the story of a child prodigy slowly consumed by the very champagne that once celebrated his glory at 16. A child star destroyed too young by fame and alcohol. But there were others who, even at the height of their success, chose to hide their tragedies beneath an almost flawless mask. Part 6. Eutha Joyce. The secret inside Mildred Roper's Tumblr. In the late 1970s, more than 20 million British viewers burst into laughter in front of their televisions as they watched the housewife Mildred Roper shouting, sharp-tongued and hilariously expressive, in the legendary series George and Mildred. Eutha Joyce's charming performance and satirical expressions turned her into one of the most beloved queens of television. Yet, when the director called cut and the cameras stopped rolling, an entirely different scene emerged. Stepping into the shadows of her dressing room, Eutha's smile faded instantly. She would quietly pull out a bottle of brandy, carefully pour a generous amount into a tumbler, and drink it down in absolute silence. Eutha Joyce was a master of performance, not only on screen, but in concealing her addiction. She was not the type of loud, destructive drunk who caused chaos on set. For over 10 years, none of her colleagues knew that she consistently consumed half a bottle of hard liquor every single day. So what drove such a successful woman into the abyss of self-destruction? It was a suffocating loneliness. Despite being adored by millions, Eutha carried a deep insecurity about her appearance. A painful divorce struck her like a fatal blow, severing every remaining belief she had in personal happiness. A co-star once recalled, with sorrow, her whispered confession in a moment of vulnerability. "Mildred can make millions of people out there laugh, but Eutha has no one. Eutha only has this bottle to comfort her every night." Each evening, she poured vodka into a tumbler like a ritual to anesthetize her soul. The brutal truth only surfaced when she collapsed and died of liver failure at the age of 53. During the autopsy, doctors were shocked to discover that her liver had swollen to twice its normal size, a silent testament to the tens of thousands of drinks that had passed through her body over a decade. The following day, British newspapers were filled with mournful headlines, calling her a silent victim of her own success. Eutha Joyce concealed her pain in silence. But for another prominent figure in comedy, alcohol transformed him into an eccentric, irritable man who rejected all sympathy until his final moments. Part 7. Charles Hawtrey, the carry-on old man, and the decision not to lose his legs. The luggage conveyor belt rattled loudly, extras hurried through their scenes, and laughter echoed across the carry-on set. Amid that chaotic yet cheerful atmosphere, veteran actor Charles Hawtrey lay motionless, draped awkwardly over the conveyor. Everyone laughed, assuming he was improvising another comedic gag. Only Barbara Windsor, standing nearby, recognized the harsh truth. He wasn't acting. He had passed out drunk in the middle of filming. Hawtrey was once an icon, a quirky, effeminate old man who brought life to the wildly popular Carry On film series. But behind the camera, addiction had eaten away at him. In her memoir, Barbara Windsor painted a grim portrait of her colleague. Charles drank far too much gin far too often. Alcohol stripped away his humor, turning him into a bitter, irritable man, always ready to pick a fight. The turning point of his complete downfall came in 1965, when his mother, whom he was deeply attached to, passed away. The final anchor in his life snapped, and he plunged into the sea of alcohol without any lifeline. His decline led to chronic lateness, forgotten lines, and eventually, producers were forced to remove Charles Hawtrey from the very franchise he had helped build. Discarded, he retreated into an isolated, shadowy life in a small house in Deal, Kent. A neighbor once saw him wandering with a vacant stare, clutching a bottle, bitterly muttering, "I have to drink. Drink to forget the damn truth that those people at Carry On don't need an old man like me anymore." The tragedy reached its peak in 1984. In a drunken stupor, he fell asleep on his sofa with a lit cigarette in hand. The house burst into flames. Though he survived, the blood vessels in his legs had been completely destroyed by decades of heavy drinking and smoking. At the hospital, doctors delivered a cold verdict. Both legs had to be amputated to save his life. Charles Hawtrey, with a twisted pride and stubborn defiance of someone who no longer cared, glared and snapped, "I'd rather die with my boots on." That chilling declaration perfectly embodied the dark humor of his life. 4 years later, in 1988, he died at the age of 73, his legs intact, but his soul utterly shattered. Charles Hawtrey used alcohol as a form of rebellion against being cast aside by time, while the following veteran actor used gallons of alcohol each month to bury one of the darkest secrets of his life. Part 8. Wilfrid Bramble, Old Man Steptoe, and the 2 Hidden Bottles of Gin. The cramped, suffocating set of Steptoe & Son was often filled with shouting matches and bitter insults. Television audiences watched the ragged old man Albert Steptoe arguing fiercely with his son on screen, and laughed heartily. But the crew behind the scenes could only hold their breath. The hostility between Wilfrid Bramble and his co-star Harry H. Corbett was not just scripted, it was real hatred, fueled and inflamed by the substance flowing through his body: gin. Crew members whispered a disturbing truth. Every day on set, Wilfrid Bramble consumed at least 2 full bottles of pure gin. The stench of alcohol was so overwhelming that he devised a bizarre trick, soaking his dentures in a glass of pure vodka. He deceived others and himself by claiming it was to keep his breath fresh and clean. But in reality, it was simply a way to let alcohol seep into his gums even while delivering lines. So why would such a talented actor drown himself in such an immense amount of alcohol? The answer lay in a tragedy of the times. Wilfrid was a gay man, living and working in an era when British society treated it as taboo, a crime capable of destroying one's career and reputation overnight. The fear of exposure, the torment of living a double life under the spotlight, gave rise to severe paranoia. Alcohol became the only shield he had against society's scrutiny. But that shield turned him into something toxic. His constant drunkenness led him to lose control, frequently attacking and insulting Corbett, poisoning the working atmosphere. The press began to sense something was wrong. Tabloid columns whispered cruel rumors about a filthy, unpleasant Steptoe old man in real life. Malicious gossip, combined with his deteriorating behavior caused by alcohol, completely shattered his once brilliant career. Wilfrid Bramble died in 1985, closing a life spent hiding his true self, where pain, prejudice, and talent all dissolved into the burning bitterness of gin. His death also marked the end of a sorrowful chapter in British television, where the laughter of audiences was unknowingly paid for with the lives, blood, tears, and tortured souls of the artists themselves. Part 9. Ian Hendry, the first Avenger and the ghost of his lost wife. In the grainy black and white footage of the pilot episode that made British television history, Ian Hendry appeared with a commanding presence, sharp eyes, and the defiant smile of an invincible hero. In the very first version of the Avengers, released in 1961, he was the true center of the universe, the Dr. David Keel, a man on a mission to deliver justice, while the great Patrick Macnee at the time played only a supporting role. At that moment, Hendry seemed to have everything in his grasp: exceptional talent, a ruggedly handsome charm, and a brilliant future laid out before him in the entertainment world. But real life does not offer happy endings like superhero films. That seemingly invincible man did not fall to any villain, but to loss, psychological trauma, and relentless alcohol. Ian Hendry's tragedy was closely tied to a breathtaking yet tragically short-lived beauty of British cinema, actress Janet Munro. They were once a golden couple, a symbol of both love and rising careers. Yet behind the facade of their home, both were struggling with the same demon: alcohol addiction. Their marriage was a whirlwind of passionate love, but also filled with drunken episodes, arguments, and a suffocating sense of despair. Unlike the tidy resolutions of film scripts, real life struck Hendry with a devastating blow in 1972, when Janet Munro died tragically at the age of 38. Doctors concluded the cause of death as heart disease, but everyone in the industry silently understood that alcohol had drained her life away. The death of his beloved wife did not just take one life. It dragged Ian Hendry's soul into the grave with her. From that fateful day on, Ian Hendry was no longer living. He was merely existing. Pain and guilt crushed his mind, driving him to drink not for pleasure, but for absolute oblivion. A co-star once recounted with deep sorrow a late night in a smoke-filled bar when Hendry, his bloodshot eyes empty, pushed a full glass toward a young woman and challenged her. "Drink, drink, because it helps me forget Janet." Those words sounded like a desperate cry for help from the depths of an abyss, yet no one could reach down to pull him out. As hallucinations of his late wife continued to haunt him, Hendry drank more heavily. The once elegant gentleman now accepted cheap roles, appearing briefly in forgettable B-movies for one purpose alone: to earn enough cash to throw into bottles of hard liquor. And eventually, alcohol completed its final act. In 1984, at the age of 53, Ian Hendry collapsed from a catastrophic stomach hemorrhage. His body had been destroyed from within after more than a decade submerged in alcohol. In his death certificate, the coroner did not hesitate to state clearly and coldly the direct cause of death of the first Avenger: alcohol. From the painful, agonizing death of Ian Hendry, soaked in blood and sorrow, we move into a completely contrasting scene. Though another life taken by alcohol, this man chose to greet death with an almost unsettling calm and grace. Part 10. John LeMessurier, the lazy soldier with the final smile. Dressed in a perpetually rumpled military uniform, with drooping eyes and a languid demeanor that somehow radiated refined British gentility, the character Sergeant Wilson in the classic comedy series Dad's Army became legendary. In any dire or chaotic situation, Wilson maintained a calmness so absurd it became comedic. And in a strangely poignant parallel, the man who brought that character to life, actor John LeMessurier, used that same calmness and politeness to face a life filled with bleeding wounds. Throughout the golden years of the 1970s, John was a gem of the small screen. But behind his gentle smile and distant gaze was a man quietly poisoning his liver day after day. Unlike the destructive rebellion of Keith Moon or the violent outbursts of Robert Shaw, John LeMessurier chose a drinking style that was discreet, measured, and almost gentlemanly. He drank to mask the erosion caused by chronic anxiety, and especially to swallow the humiliations of his personal life. His marriage bore a stain that could never be washed away when his wife openly had an affair with his own close friend. Instead of jealousy, rage, or public scandal, John chose to internalize the pain, numbing his proud heart with quiet glasses of alcohol. The drink never robbed him of his composure on set, but it slowly drained the life from his veins. Cirrhosis gradually took hold, destroying the frail body of the great artist without anyone around him realizing it. In his final days, when his body had deteriorated beyond recovery, John LeMessurier still retained the dignity of a true gentleman. Lying in his hospital bed, as the line between life and death grew as thin as a thread, he softly called his wife closer. There were no accusations, no bitter regrets over a life ruined by alcohol. He simply gave a faint smile and whispered his final words before slipping into a deep coma. "It's all been rather lovely." Yet the peak of his wit, the very thing that defined his name, lay in the way he announced his own death. Knowing the end was near, he carefully prepared his own obituary to send to the prestigious newspaper The Times. A few days after his passing, readers across Britain opened the paper and found themselves laughing through tears at his final message. John LeMessurier wishes it to be known that he conked out. He sadly misses family and friends. At the age of 71, cirrhosis ended the life of John LeMessurier in 1983, marking perhaps the gentlest, most peaceful conclusion, yet also one of the most quietly sorrowful. That is the somber portrait of 10 British entertainment legends of the 1970s who lost themselves to alcohol. Behind the glamour and applause were lonely, fractured souls. They turned to alcohol as a lifeline to escape pressure and pain. But tragically, that lifeline became the very stone that dragged them to the depths. 10 peaks of fame, all ending in the same brutal fate, at the bottom of a bottle. Their stories stand as a haunting warning about the invisible cost of fame. What do you think about this painful trade-off? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to explore more hidden stories to come. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.